Hey, y'all. It's your girl, Danii Gold, and I present you with the Gold Spot Podcast. So, my first official guest I have today, he's a pretty much a marketing genius, a music guru, a manager, a coach, a curator of Julian Gems. So, I present you with Julian Keaton. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing cool. So I have you as my first official guest. So yay,
Honored.
you should feel very important and special.
I'm honored.
I'm glad. So you're a man of many titles. So without being modest, and probably I missed out on some things, talk your shit, explain what you do, without being modest. You can brag on yourself, just list all the things that you're involved in.
Yeah. A lot of people know me for Stereo Assault, which is going on 10 years now. We started it pretty much Labor Day weekend, 2010. So I'm happy to say that through that business, we've been able to do talent management, concert promotion, where we've booked literally everybody from Run the Jewels, Chance the Rapper, D1, Foreign Exchange, you name it, we booked them. Talent management, I feel like I've already said that. But we did just about everything that you can do from radio show, blogs, all that. So we're working on our 10-year anniversary project that I can't really say too much on, but that's something that's in the works. I'm also the founder of Dimensions, a geolocation mobile game designed to introduce college students and transplants to new cities, and as well as to foster civic engagement with residents and community organizations. Super excited about what that'll do for the community at large. I'm also, as you stated, I'm a talent manager to two artists, MC Trey and as well as Marvell Q. I also have a business called Julian Jewels, where I provide educational resources for entertainers, artists, and then also professionals that are in the entertainment industry. Everything from interview segments with industry leaders to artists, to just me kind of talking my shit about my experience and what I know about the game. So I try to do everything as much as I can for the community, and especially the music community, because I have a deep love and passion for storytelling and art and music. So I try to continue to stay tapped in that way. I think that's it.
You think that's it. Well, in addition to that, you pretty much helped me and put a little bit of pressure on me to, figure out my mission for my dating goal. You definitely had me stuck for a minute because I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you questioned me like, okay, well, what's your mission? And I was like, well, I don't know, so you really had me think about that. So to my listeners out there, he definitely helped me figure out exactly my purpose within my brand. So I thank you for that. So how did you get your start in the entertainment industry? Like, where did your love for it just start? Just even with helping people, because you don't only do things within the entertainment industry. You just, like you said, you deal with and help people within the community. So where did your love for that initially start?
Uh, I'm a giver at heart, I was raised a certain way to, one, make sure that I'm straight, but also make sure that the community that I'm from is good. And so, even though I grew up in Walnut Park, which is a community that is disinvested and disenfranchised and doesn't get enough love. So I'm always kind of there wanting to give love because a lot of people don't get it or don't have it and need it. Right. And so I kind of am that vessel for a lot of people. My love for music kind of came, I say this, like my very first album I ever listened to growing up, or ever really, was D'Angelo Brown Sugar. So, which is a hell of a way to listen to music. So, I just always had a knack for music and groove and rhythm. And so I started writing my own poetry, which kind of then led to me making my own rhymes, which led to me making my own beats, which led to me engineering myself, which led to also me DJing, and then talent managing. And so one to just be able to just learn, but then also like figure out ways to which I could be of value to other people. Because I think at the end of the day, and I think this is a common theme that I've had, a common discussion that I've had with people, is that, you know, people think we're only as good as the transaction that we have with people. But at the end of the day, when we really look at it, is our relationships are based off what we can do for one another. And so as long as you have something of value, you can always be valuable to someone. And so I felt that just growing up, as long as I was valuable to someone, there will always be a need for me. So that's kind of my philosophy and my perspective, and how I kind of like grew up to this point of always giving back.
So I have a question down the line about this, because I have pretty much down the line, I'll get a little bit more in depth about this. But currently, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things are slowly starting to get back to normal. But when it was still kind of crazy, how did COVID affect your business and just how you will go about doing things involving it and even your everyday life?
Yeah, good question. To start, I made this like tweet last week where I pretty much was like, yeah, I come from St. Louis, from a resident of the Walnut Park neighborhood, which is high in COVID cases. You know, there's a greater chance that I die of a bullet than I would of COVID. So no matter how much fear mongering that is going to be pushed, I still got to live my life, and people still have to live their lives. So as I say that, you know, I don't want to say that too much has impacted me, because it has. Like, I've lost family members due to COVID. And so what I'll say is that from like a music perspective, it really allowed me to really like zone in on Julian Jules, which was already an online business, but making sure that we were doing everything we can to monetize that online business. And so, so it helped in that regard. The Stereo Assault project that we were working, that we are working on, pretty much kind of had to put a halt on things because it required gathering people for shows, and then also for studio productions, right? So we had to kind of put a halt to the larger gatherings and mid-sized gatherings that we were doing on that front. And then also the Dimensions, the geolocation game, we had to kind of figure out and pivot essentially to being able to offer a virtual component of the game, because like it just doesn't make too much sense to try to get people to continue to go out in public while there's a pandemic to like get to learn about the community. So we wanted to be able to offer a virtual version or a virtual component that allow people to still do those same geolocation challenges from the comfort of your home. So it definitely has impacted me, but it allowed me to get more innovative and figure out ways to which continue to bring value to people.
To piggyback off of that, do you feel like there's a lot of pressure on creatives, you know, such as artists or just creatives in general, to stay relevant and think of like innovative ways to stay relevant within like their business? Like, for instance, you got the versus battles, you know, since these artists can't hold concerts anymore, they're resorting to the versus battles. Shout out to Timbaland and Swiss Beats for that. But do you feel like, you know, there's a lot of pressure for those artists, like, okay, now what am I gonna do? I can't make money with this concert because things are closed. So what are your thoughts on that?
Daniel Elk, the founder and CEO of Spotify, recently said that for artists to remain relevant, they need to release music more frequently. And so pretty much challenging the myth that an artist should only release an album every 2 or 3 years, which is what superstar artists like Kendrick Lamar has done, right? So in that same respect, as a lot of independent artists, a lot of folks maybe put out 2 or 3 projects a year, whether it's, you know, singles or EPs, or even albums, right, or mixtapes. I think one, like, do what you're comfortable doing. Like, the only pressure that there really is the pressure that you put on yourself. Like, there's always going to be Like you could put out a project tomorrow and there's going to be 100 releases with it, and there's going to be 100 releases the next day, right? So I think people tend to forget that the only pressure is the pressure you put on yourself to like, oh, I gotta have this perfect, I gotta reach excellent. Like, no, like take your time. There's billions of people out there in the world. You know, work your strategy, work your plan, and make sure that you have KPIs set so you know when to either pivot or when to go ahead and start working on the next thing. Move on your own pace.
So you make it seem so simple, like, oh, it shouldn't be pressure for them. Just do what you want to do. You know, you just pretty much you're saying that there should already be a plan in place for things like this when it comes to like with artists. Like you said, with having those KPIs, like, you know, there already should be something in place so you don't have to feel the pressure of doing something out of the norm for you, right?
And I say that, but also another thing is that I think we tend to overthink things. I know tons of artists that like I'm dealing with this with Marvell, with one of the artists that I'm currently managing, right? To where there's tons of artists who are studio rats who will stay in the studio, make a bunch of music, but never put it out, right? And that's no knock on anybody that does that. But at some point, you are like that time has to be compensated from somewhere, right? So what revenue streams make the most sense if you have a huge back catalog of music that you're just kind of sitting on, right? Does that look like doing sync licensing and getting a membership with taxi.com and seeing what sync license opportunities are out there and seeing what your back catalog could best be classified to fit an opportunity, right? And that's where a lot of money is. Or that could also look like going through your back catalog and just releasing a bunch of loosies and singles. Like hip hop artist Russ, before he got his big break, he was putting out a single every week that he self-wrote, produced, recorded, mixed and mastered, and he was doing that every week. And it after like 2 or 3 years of him doing that, he was able to really see the returns that he was looking, right? So I think there's a balance of like, yeah, I probably should only put the pressure that I'm gonna have on myself, but also at the same time, like you're the ones setting expectations. You're the ones that are setting those goals for yourself. And so don't let the world tell you how to feel about your own expectations and goals. You know, stay grounded in that and release music. Like again, there's millions of songs coming out each week. So how are you going to stand out, right? And that might be a exaggeration, but I think the figure is about 40,000 a day. So if it's 40,000 new songs a day coming out, how are you going to stand out, right? And even then, sure, like be within that space, be within that library of other music, but make sure that you're working all of your plan and your strategies as you're doing it. But give yourself the best opportunity to do that. So I hope that makes sense.
No, yeah, that was definitely a lot of knowledge, but yes, it makes sense. So, in addition to that, as you were just talking about Russ, like how he was dropping, you know, a song like once a week. So then you have artists like Wale. I think it was like last year he had dropped an EP like back to back, like 3 months in a row. Like he dropped one EP, then he dropped another, and I believe it was like early last year. And then you hear him complain about not being as recognized as he should, or he's not as mainstream. He doesn't feel like he gets the recognition that he deserves. I mean, I'm still a fan of him, but I'm guessing he means from like a different audience. So do you sometimes feel that dropping that music all the time, that it can kind of, and I won't say backfire, but sometimes it doesn't help? Or is it just the way that you do it, the way that you release that music, like when you're doing it like consecutively, like back to back?
It's twofold because from Spotify and Apple Music and Audio Mac, from the perspective of a streaming platform, when you're releasing music more frequently, you're giving the algorithm more opportunity to program you, right? To be discovered more, right? So in that instance, it works for you. But in the instance where storytelling, right, it's ultimately up to you. Like we're not too far off from when Lil Wayne was putting out a mixtape every month. You know, like that's still only less than a decade ago. Hell, I think Gucci and Future, not even 5 years ago, were putting out mixtapes a month. So it's one of those things where you know what you have the capacity for. So don't tell anybody, don't let anybody otherwise tell you. Like if you have the capacity to put out a song or an album or an EP or a mixtape out every other month or every other week, it's your capacity. Just make sure that you are, one, that you have a budget, and then two, for all those things that you're doing, but also that you have realistic goals. I don't think artists, and not just even artists, but people, I don't think people think about SMART goals enough. Those smart, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. People don't think about that enough when it comes to figuring out your plan. Because those things, having those things in place will let you know whether or not you're actually achieving what you're wanting to get done. So definitely do that. And I think that's more important than just putting out more music.
So where do you think, like, what do you think the future of music will be like moving forward due to this pandemic? Like we've already, like I was saying before, we've seen the versus battles, we've seen the live award shows. Only one, I think it was the BET Awards. But what do you think it will be like moving forward now?
That's a great question. I think this is the opportunity where people get the most creative, where people get to have the most fun when it comes to that creative process. You know, this is the time where you can utilize and really leverage, if you have access to it, the internet, and get creative in that space. Get innovative, get creative. I think we're at a space where there's a new company just about every other week coming out with how they can be able to provide a reach for artists to reach new people, right? So at the end of the day, figure out what your goals are and figure out who's also in that same like space that you accomplished in that goal, and figure out a way to be able to maximize that. But when it comes to just the industry itself, I don't know. 2020 has been a wild ride.
Man,
You know,
tell me about it.
I know plenty of radio folks that have lost jobs. I know plenty of journalists that have lost jobs. I know plenty of audio people, sound people that have lost jobs. And so that's why it's like, if you're truly a part of a music community, start having conversations with people, because people out here are, I don't want to say bored, but they're looking for opportunities. So have those conversations and see who's doing what and see who'd be interested in doing what, because a lot of folks are trying to figure out what the next step is. Now, I do think that we're going to, over the next year, see drive-in concerts pick up more until we can kind of get back to some normalcy of concerts and festivals. So expect the drive-in concerts to be a thing. Expect there to be more live concerts. I've been seeing a live stream concerts, excuse me. Over the last few days, I've seen maybe about 5 that were really dope, like, and unique in nature. I think you pronounce your name Umi, is I think how you say it, but she had her band like in a garden outside with really good audio equipment, and they jammed out for 45 minutes and it sounded amazing, right? So figure out creative ways to like still get your itch off as a musician, or as a creative, or as a professional, because the opportunities are there. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to actually go out and put some hard work in.
Speaking of those drive-in concerts, that sounds fun. Like I know I've seen a picture where there was just a festival or a concert where people were like set up on these like metal things and they were spaced out, but it's like everybody had somewhere to sit. So of course that concert that'll probably hold, we're just gonna say 2,000 people, probably can't hold as many because they have to space it out. But just that concept that someone was creative enough to even think of that is cool. Also, when it comes to movies, it seems like some of the things that we're dealing with now in the pandemic we have to resort back to what life was like before all this crazy technology, like before technology took over. So like when it deals with movies, drive-in movie theaters used to be a thing. And it's like, well, what if that comes back? And what if that makes a comeback? That'd be something that we're resorting back to because we can't be in a movie theater. So I'm looking forward to it. Like anything where it's like, oh, I can just sit in my car and drive up, and I don't even have to dress and look cute to go to a concert no more because I can just sit in my car. I think that'd be a cool concept.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but we're gonna take a brief break, and when we come back, I'm gonna ask you some more in-depth questions, and then we're gonna play a little game before you leave. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
All right, we'll be back, y'all. Hey, y'all, it's Danii Gold, and this podcast is sponsored by the Anchor app. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free, and who doesn't like free stuff? And it also has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go ahead and download the free Anchor app, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, y'all. We are back with the Gold Spot podcast. And again, I have my guest here, Julian Keaton. So, Julian, what do you look for when it comes to managing an artist? Like when you're seeking out an artist to manage without telling too much?
No, I go all in because I think people don't really know. Or artists don't really know. So it's a couple things. First and foremost is your work ethic. It's how hard that you're willing to hustle, how hard are you willing to chase your dream? Because some people say that they want it, but don't put the work in. So that's super important to any manager. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're going to utilize our connections to get you where you want to go. And if you don't perform or don't keep your word, then it ruins our relationships. So we want to make sure that you have the work ethic to fulfill and deliver what you say you're going to do. So that's the start. Secondly, for me, it's talent. I'm a believer that talent can take you really, really far if you have the right work ethic and the right attitude. And there's a lot of artists who aren't as talented as artists that I would like to manage per se. But at the end of the day, when it comes to that, like more often than not, it's the more non-talented artists that either have the budget or the work ethic that'll get them there. So for me, it's the work ethic, and then making sure that you're super talented. And then thirdly is if you're coachable and you're going to listen, right? There's a lot of artists who think they know it all. And that's cool if you want to be like that. But at the end of the day, if you want to really use my connections and really understand how I can help, or how people like me can help, you really need to be able to listen, and then also take time to be open-minded, to be like, yeah, let's give it a shot, let's try it. So I mean, those are the main three things that at least I look for. I'm a super patient person. Not everybody is patient as me. I will say that. So, but just know, like, the biggest thing is as long as you're gonna work super hard, then anybody, I don't want to say anybody, but most folks definitely give you at least a look. But I guess one last thing is also like, and it's connected with hard work. For most managers, we get paid off commission, so somewhere between 5 to 15% generally. And so, and there's a bunch of new models that I don't want to dive too deep into for the purpose of the call, because that's a whole other conversation, but somewhere between 5 to 15%. Now, if you aren't bringing in, say, $5,000, and even then, like, if my percentage is only 5% and you're not even bringing $5,000, that's not worth my time, right? So for most managers, when we're looking for artists, we need to see that you are being able to make money off your music, whether that's through merchandise, whether that's through sync opportunities, whether that's through live shows, or whether that's through streaming, whatever it's through some form of music related products. That's how we managers, make our money. Now, some folks try to get a cut of other non-music related stuff, but that's not me. So, but however, like, that's kind of something else that looks good, is that you're actually making money. So, but that's pretty much it.
So do you meet, like, how do you know if your artist is being truthful about what they're bringing in, though? So do you meet with their accountant, or are you also in charge of the money, so that way you can see the numbers and know where to take your 5% and your 10%? So how do you know, like, and if you're not, like, how do you know if they're being truthful? Is it just like you just hoping that you all have that trusting relationship where they'll tell you? Is it like a month to month end, like, okay, how much money did you generate the end of this month? Okay, let me take my cut. Like, what's that process like?
The best situation is if they're up and running. So it's tough because, when somebody needs a manager, they might not have their books in order. That's just the reality. They may not have the business infrastructure there. That's a reality. So it's really just going off trust. Trusting that person is pretty much saying that what's actually happening is real. And then as a manager, we kind of know what's up. We keep our ear close to the street and know who's doing what. We know who's selling our shows. We can see on social media what you have to offer. Again, at the end of the day, as long as you got the drive and the hard work ethic, people are going to respect that more because they know that you're at least going to hustle, right? And as long as you got that hustle, then we could figure out ways to make it work. But preferably if you got books, perfect. That generally helps the best.
So going back to, so I was listening to an interview that you did, and you said that you pretty much seek out the artists. There are people who come to you, but like you said, they may not have good music, they may not have, good, business ethics, etc. So do you generally, that's usually what you do, is you seek, like, the artists that you have now, you seek them out, or it's just every blue moon, the artists may come to you and they're actually good, and, all their ducks are good and lined up, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I'll manage you. So have you had to turn away more people than you've approached, I would say?
So, story behind that. So after I had managed Mastermind back in 2017, I probably had like meetings with about 10 artists. I didn't really know what the expectations were coming into those meetings with those artists, but it usually would end after just like me just kicking off game with just, hey, can you manage me? Right. And I don't want to throw names out there, but some folks I had seen do the work, but I also wasn't in the right headspace to like manage at certain times, right? And there are other times where, at least for me, I wanted to make sure that I could be of value to you. So like, if you have a certain type of music that doesn't necessarily align with who I am as a person, I won't do it. And even then, like, generally, and really right now, it's like, work with me on a marketing level. Like, that's the easiest way to get an in with me, because then I can kind of see your infrastructure and I can kind of see what you need. And even then, so I go into a little bit of like what happened with me and MC Trey, how that kind of worked. So to provide some context, back when I used to DJ back in 2009, 2010, MC Trey had approached me to DJ his very first mixtape. And it was my first mixtape that I had ever DJ'd and hosted, was his. And so when it came back around 8-9 years later that, hey, I got this new video that, I want you to do the marketing for, and we decided to work together, and everything was going off without a hitch. I could see me and him working together longer than just a marketing campaign, right? And so with him, I started to see what his gaps were, what he was missing, where how I could be of true value as beyond just a marketing consultant, but more as a manager. And so we had that conversation like, hey, I see what you're doing. I see that you make a good amount of money from merch. I see that you really trying to push your music and get your message out there, I think I could be one of the missing pieces to help you really get to that next level, right? Mm-hmm. So the best way to get in with me is through the marketing. And even then, if you're super talented, you know, back when I first managed Jay Mall, shout out to Jay Mall, like I had met him a year before I decided to manage him. And that entire first year, he was like, manage me. But I was like, invite me to a show and I'll consider it. He invited me to his first show, and immediately, as soon as he got off stage, I'd be like, yo, bro, I got you. You know, kind of very similar to with Marvell Q. And what's very interesting with Marvell Q, it wasn't necessarily like, I haven't even had a chance to see him perform live yet, but for me, with him, it was just the music. His music is super dope. And having my network and the tools that I have, I felt like I could really help him get to where he wants to go. So sometimes it's literally just the music. But the easiest way to like get that in with me is to like first hire me and my team as your marketer. And if it makes sense down the line, 9 months, a year down the line, sure. But it takes definitely a nurturing phase for me to get to know you, get a feel for you, see what your interests are, see if we're compatible as people, because, you know, managers are like, funny story. And then I'll wrap it up. I'll be done.
No, you're good. You're good.
I went to A3C with Mastermind back in 2017 when he opened up for Nas.
That's dope. Super dope.
You know.
So Mastermind. That's what's up.
We ran into a OG. He's known in the industry as Uncle Tony. He's an OG down from the South who is a talent manager. He's I don't want to say that he's known for, but when I met him, he was managing the artist Trouble based down in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so he was telling me, he's like, yeah, man, being a manager is a glorified babysitter. And he said that, I was like, you know what, that's hella real, like hella fucking real. Excuse my language, but that's what it is. And so, like, you gotta understand, we say that with our love and respect, but at times, like, you know, even though we that glorified babysitter, you know, we're going to be that babysitter that's going to be with you through the thick and thin. When times get rough, when things get hard, we're going to be there. You know, at least a manager that actually like cares and loves and really fuck with you like that, they're going to be there through those hard times, beyond just the good. So, you know, it's definitely hard work. But you know, if you love what you do, you're gonna do it and be able to serve people who you believe in.
Right, and it won't even seem like you're doing work. It just seems like you're just doing what you're passionate about.
Exactly.
So, how did you learn all the knowledge that you spread and that you have, like with your Julian gems and all of that? So, like, how did you learn all the marketing tools, the monetizing off of your brand? Like, was it more a trial and error for you personally? Was it something you went to school for? Is it just something you just sit back and just did a study on? Like, how did you gain all this knowledge? I know you say you used to DJ, but what other aspects, like, in your life taught you all the knowledge that you have now that you spread?
So it's about the mindset. So it worked out in my favor because I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My father started his own company back in the 90s. And then, like, generations further back on my father's side, we were one of the wealthier families down in Mississippi. One of the wealthiest indigenous tribes, one of the families of one of the indigenous tribes down in Mississippi that owned a lot of farmland. And we also had a very popular convenience store right outside of Jackson, Mississippi. So I've come from a line of entrepreneurs. And so it was kind of just in me.
It's just in your blood.
It's kind of just in my blood to be able to adapt and really pick up what it means to be an entrepreneur. When we talk about the business aspect of the entertainment industry or the music business, that was trial and error. Like, a lot of folks don't really realize. I mean, the music's still out there. Like, I used to rap. Like, it's pretty known. Like, I started off doing all of that, released music earlier in the decade, like 2000, I think 12 was the first time I put out a project. And so a lot of what I like teach are just things that I've done for myself, done through management, through trial and error. You know, it's really about being able to know and have your finger on the trigger, and on the pulse of like what's popping, what's the pulse. And the more and more that you can stay on that post, the more that you can kind of see where the industry is going, what the trends are now, and how you can adapt, and just also what worked in the past, so you know how to like take from that and then use this and use that to make something really dope. I've been blessed enough by the Most High to be able to really know what's what and know how to move and help artists that way. So I give all glory to the Most High in that respect. But it's definitely trial and error. You learn stuff every day, and I'm no different than you all. To be honest, I'm just smart enough to not to say it like that, but I'm smart enough to know how to educate myself, and then also know what to pick up and what not to pick up, and what's valuable and what's going to bring weight to a situation.
Mm-hmm. So what made you want to take a back seat on being an actual artist and actually just working more so on the back end, like, you know, the marketing and managing artists? Like, what made you just say, I'm gonna just do something else still within the same industry though?
Yeah, it was, to be honest, so my very first project was a project called The Calling. And I called it that because I felt that I was called to do this work as an artist, and then also on the music business side. One of the very first people that I ever recorded with was with Hello Jizzle. Back when we were in high school, I went over his home, the house that he was staying at, and I recorded a remix to Dead Presidents by Jay-Z. And so like as we were like kind of listening back to the song, he was like, "Hey, yo, Julian, you dope and all, but I think you'll be a better manager," right? Mm-hmm. And so I gave that a lot of thought, and also knowing my entrepreneurial background and mindset, mm-hmm. I was like, all right, let me really give that some thought. And so after I had put out the Calling EP back in 2012, I really started to look at the landscape of like what made sense for myself, but also for the community at large. And so I just felt that the role that I needed to play was the role of an industry professional. Now that doesn't, like, I still get out and perform. I still hit up open mics as a poet. Like, I'm still a poet. Like, I've had some of my poetry placed in documentaries. I still get asked to do poetry for albums. I still get asked to do poetry for podcasts. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy sharing my poetry because it's a creative outlet for me, so people can still get my artistry, right? Mm-hmm. But it at the time of when I stopped making music, you know, it also in something else, like I also realized I just enjoyed making music for myself as a creative outlet instead of for the world. And so I've been in this very unique space even more recently where I want to kind of get back to making music. But if I do, you know, it'll be either for myself or it'll be with more intention on where I like help others with their creative process.
So piggybacking off of that, would you ever be a ghostwriter? Because, you know, you said that you have poetry, like, you know, you write poetry, that's still a form of writing, like that's kind of like Wale's style of music. So would you ever be a ghostwriter, or just, you know, an upfront just writer on someone's project? Like moving forward, like would that something you'll tap back into?
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing though is I don't want to just write for anybody. I want to have an actual personal relationship with these people that I'm writing for, because I want it to be from their perspective, not necessarily from a very general perspective. And that's just me as a person, and me as a writer. Like that's just my perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of knowledge. How do you pretty much differentiate the knowledge that you give out for free and then the knowledge that you charge for? Like, how do you split that up? Like, I'll drop a few gems on them. But if they want some more information, they gonna have to, book through my site to get a constant, we're gonna have to have a one-on-one conversation. So
Yeah.
how do you determine which information you're giving out for free versus the information that, you charge for? Because I know you said you have a giving spirit. So just by nature, you're just gonna probably just dish out any kind of information. But I know at some point in time you probably have to pull back, like, okay, let me wait a minute, let me try to, withhold some information just to kind of have some things be, won't even say a secret, but have some things people may want to come back to me for.
So I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. Within the first, say 5 minutes of me sitting down with someone, I'm going to ask very important questions to kind of see what your knowledge base is. Now, given that knowledge base, that allows me to kind of determine how much information that I should give you. And it's not even how much, but the quality of, or the structure. That's probably the best way to say it, the structure of how I should deliver some information, right? I was talking to an artist earlier today about, he was like, yeah, I want to look for a manager. I want a manager. And I was just like, I could have gave him a bunch of just game that, a consultant would give him. But I was like, hey, the best thing that you can do is do your SMART goals, figure out your business model via the business model canvas. And as you are doing what you do and continue to do what you do, the right person is gonna come, right? And so being able to explain what a business model canvas is, because a lot of artists don't know that. They don't understand the idea of a business model, or even how to do SMART goals. So that might be enough within itself to where that might overwhelm folks. I've been in consultations where people, paid consultations where people felt completely overwhelmed with the knowledge that I gave them, right? And so
I can totally see that.
It's one of those things where I'm learning more and more how I need to structure information in the delivery and the flow of information, and so that's something that I'm still learning. But even then, I'm an open book. If you come to me and be like, and you already have a knowledge base, then I'm like, all right, well, I can go really in depth with you about a conversation and really give more information than the next person. And I love to do it because I want everybody to win. So I kind of tailor the conversation to whoever that's I'm talking to. And even then, if it's live during the Q&A for Julian and Jules, you ask me a really good question, I'm gonna give you a really good answer.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of filter off some of your answers. You can something that I did see was that you were breaking down royalties and calculating them, and I'm like, I've always wanted to know how this works, but I just thought I would need to really be in the know to know. But that's just some free knowledge that you drop. So I guess you pretty much what's super valuable and what's valuable information that comes with a price. So you pretty much how to differentiate, because like you said, within the first 5 minutes you pick people's brains, okay, they don't seem like they know a lot, versus okay, they know a little something. I can tell them a few little secrets. So with that,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, what would you say?
I was just gonna say, and just to add on again, it's about the structure of it all. So if you know a little bit, so if you are not familiar with royalty breakdown, right, then I'm gonna touch on it. But for me to really go really in depth about the various types of contracts that you're gonna come across, you're gonna have to have some knowledge base. So there's various degrees of information that I can give you, but it's really based off your own knowledge base. But I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just about to ask another question, so that was perfect timing. So you were saying that you wouldn't manage someone whose music you didn't really align with, if their lyrics just didn't, mesh well with who you are as a person. But would you manage someone in a different genre who you don't listen to, but what they're saying is, it aligns with what, your beliefs are. So a rock artist or a country artist, would you manage, anyone in that genre, if their lyrics are oh, okay, they have nice lyrics. Okay, it's nothing degrading, crazy, or something against my beliefs,
Yeah. I can't say yes, I can't say no. Whenever that opportunity arises, if the Most High tells me it's something that I need to be doing, I'll consider it and I'll do it. But right now, I haven't, like the closest, I guess, opportunity I've had to that was some neighbors of mine, some childhood friends of mine were rock artists. They were making a rock band, like alternative like rock band. And it was interesting to me. I just liked the music. And so I was like, yeah, I don't mind helping out where I can. It didn't really lead to anywhere. And it wasn't necessarily their fault or mine. It just their work ethic plus my lack of like understanding the genre and the connections, and even then that's something that I'm learning more and more about is like how to navigate the other music communities within the community. Like that's some completely else that we don't talk enough about here in St. Louis is the fact that, we talk about we're a divided city, but then you really start to get into like the nitty gritty of say a main industry, and then you start to go into all the sub little like cliques and genres, and there isn't any like how many hip hop artists are going to rock shows, or how many R&B artists are going to bluegrass shows, right? And that's your answer right there. And so if we want to have a united music front, we have to start really being it and supporting all types of music. So and even me, I feel like I'm connected to all the music organizations, but I'm not super connected to the bluegrass community or the heavy metal community, or I'm not. I would like to be just to know, but I'm as a person that is comfortable in their pocket and already has a lot going on. If an opportunity came and it made sense, sure. But right now, I probably wouldn't.
Makes sense. So with you being a St. Louis native and you've made a name for yourself here in St. Louis, would you ever consider moving to a larger music market, like Atlanta, LA, New York? That's more on the extreme side, but I don't know if Texas has a really large market, but would you consider moving, like taking your talents and your knowledge elsewhere? Do you think that you can be mobile and do both, just be, fly back and forth to wherever you need to be at?
Great question. Spiritually, I'm in a space where I'm ready to get out of the city. I'm by blood, I'm also a farmer. And so I want to get back to farming at some point in my life really soon. So like going to New York or going to an Atlanta or going to a LA to live is something that I doubt that would happen. However, given the nature of my business venture Dimensions, where it's about connecting people with the world and the cultures around them, I still will travel. Like I plan on for 2021 being being a nomad, right? Going to live in New York for say 6 weeks, going to live in Atlanta or anywhere in the country to build a network. I think people tend to forget that, the music industry is really based off who you know. And the more people that you know, the quicker and further that you can get in many respects. And so I especially plan on next year just kind of moving around, hopping around, because as you said, I kind of, in a way, I've hit my ceiling here, and I've hit that ceiling a couple times living here. And so right now, given the infrastructure that I've put into place here, it makes sense for me to start traveling and moving around, but I'm gonna always come back home and take care of home.
What if your artist wanted to move out the state? How would you deal with that, being their manager? Like, let's say you said Marvell Q, that's one of your artists that you manage. Let's say he wanted to move to Miami and MC Trey decided to move to Cali. How would you manage them, and they're in two different places? Or better yet, if you moved, how would that work with you managing them and they're still here?
I mean, we live in a time where the pandemic caused people to work from home, so it wouldn't be too difficult. It's just really a matter of what they're needing from me, what the responsibilities and tasks could be, and then making sure that I have people in place that can support them while I'm gone or in another city. I'm fortunate enough to have a network of people all around the country, especially in the major markets. So if somebody were to move to another big market, you know, I'll still be able to support and I'll still be able to manage what they have going on. So it wouldn't really impact anything. It's just a matter of figuring out new ways to communicate.
Okay. And so one of my last questions is, if you can get business, like get any advice from any music businessman, who would it be? Like anyone, like someone in the music industry who's not only succeeded within music but also business as well. Who do you wish you can get advice from?
That's a really good question. Oh Lord, that's a really good question. Oh man. Shoot. To be honest, I ain't gonna fake it with you. Do they have to be a music person?
Okay, no, I take that back. Just any kind of businessman in general, because
I'm not gonna lie to you. I recently watched the Damon John episode of Drink Champs. Mm-hmm. And just the information that he was sharing was like spot on. I think people tend to forget that the principles and the foundations of knowledge are kind of standard across the board, or like once you kind of know things, but it's a matter of being able to think about things like critically and just unique. And from what he was talking about when he was on the episode, it allowed me to kind of like really evaluate, like just listening to it made me like reevaluate distribution, and even though he's coming from like a fashion and clothing perspective, like that shifts like how I would think about music distribution. So Damon John is definitely one person who I would consider. I'm trying to think if there's a music person that I would also consider. Probably somebody like an Andre Harrell would probably be that other person.
Rest in peace to him. Yeah, he was.
I mean, he kind of did it the right. I mean, there's a ton of OGs that came before me that I would love to just pick their brains on, but that's a tough question. I'm happy you asked. I have to think about that because I could definitely manifest that meeting.
I mean, you really could. I mean, just the route that you're going now is just like you're going. You're on a good route with the information that you have, just the different things that you've done in general. So, I mean, just something to think about. I just wanted to pick your brain to see who's your, business inspiration. How people have musical inspirations. I just want to see like who you're like, what kind of mindset do you have for the person who would be that inspiration for you when it comes to business? Which brings me to our next segment. Before you go, we're gonna play a little game called Golden or Garbage, which it will I'll probably help you out with maybe some people you may think of that in the music industry. Okay. So if you could pick, which one would you say is golden or garbage? They don't technically have to be garbage, but you can just say who's more golden to you. When it comes to business, Jay-Z or Dr. Dre?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to give Jay the gold and give Dre the garbage. I don't even want to give him garbage. I'm gonna give him platinum.
You gotta give him garbage.
Silver or something.
What about Kanye or Diddy when it comes to business? They're not like a Jay-Z or Dr. Dre, but they're kind of
to business. I'm gonna go with Diddy, and I'm gonna explain why I'm gonna go with Diddy. I think Diddy understands media really well, and that's not to take away from Kanye, because he understands media to a whole nother degree. But being able to position yourself to be a decision maker and a person that can control media is super important nowadays. And the fact that he has been able to get a network platform is super important in the age that we live in. And so I would definitely go Diddy. But I'm not neglecting all of the really dope things in the empire that Yeezy has built over the last 20 years.
I can respect that. For a hot second, I forgot Diddy on Revolt. So yeah, he definitely has control over the media. So that's That's a different type of power.
He also started Bad Boy, so it's just like,
Yeah, but we don't want to talk about the artists, the millions of artists he's had on there, and we have never heard of
that.
him.
That's a whole thing. But when you talk about just the aspect of like when you there's nothing, I don't want to say nothing better, but like Diddy did something in the 90s that I think very few people could do, which was to be able to launch a business that was just gold off rip, you know. I think he made an amazing decision in wanting to be able to have Big be the star of his label, and just knowing how to position it. And that also goes back to his relentless work ethic. Like, you know, people say that you know, my work ethic is crazy because I'll work till 2 or 3 in the morning every day. But, you know, I kind of got that model from Diddy, who don't sleep, you know, from what people say. I got the same work ethic, the same hustle. So for me, I have to go with Diddy. But, and even then you put, well, it's Bad Boy versus Good Music, and Good Music got the better artists, right? More relevant artists. But and in that same respect, we live in an age where Good Music has been able to have the resources to be able to thrive. Back in the 90s, you know, it was still very much a gatekeeper era. So there was a lot more that you had to kind of get through to cut through, versus where now folks got social media now. So it's
and it was a totally different decade too. So it's just like times, like you said, times have changed.
The way you had to move back in the 90s, from what I hear, is completely different than what it is now. And so I got to give much respect to Diddy for being able to build what he built.
All right, the next one. Okay, so were you watching like the versus battles when they were, you know? Well, they're still going on, but
really, I saw the only one that I saw was Nelly versus Luda, just because it's Nelly.
So that's my question: who, like in the versus battle, who did you pick? Well, I will say, who do you think won? And you can kind of elaborate, because I have my own different theory.
I pled the fifth. I'm gonna go garbage question. Yeah, Nelly could have came harder. Everybody from the city was rooting for Nelly. Nelly kind of let us down. I ain't gonna fake it. But I plead the fifth.
I get it. Well, okay, since you don't want to say it, I will. I definitely was rooting for Nelly, because I feel like he could have played more songs than he did. But Ludacris, he did good too. But I'm still gonna go with Nelly, just because, even though he didn't do as well, but just on the strength that he's from St. Louis, and you know, we just gotta support him no matter what. But he did let us down. We know his work, no matter, you know, with them.
Man, you could have done all that. You could have done all that smoking and drinking at the end. You ain't have to do that at the beginning.
I know.
I heard he was drinking and smoking that whole weekend, so I was like, bro, your judgment was clouded. So
and he was amped up so bad, like he acted like he was killing it, and we just kind of like, what?
Huh? Like, fix your Wi-Fi, bro. I can't hear you.
Well, they said it was storming real bad where he stayed at, so let's just, you know.
Man, nah, I don't even want to give him that cop out, because, and this is all love to Cardinale, but I heard that folks at Instagram gave him a package on how to use the audio equipment, or the equipment that they set up. So, and I heard that he didn't use it. So that's on him from what I'm hearing, but
so he just did what he wanted to do.
That's right. In order. Don't be mad at me. I'm just what I heard, but even I don't like spreading gossip like that. So
right. I mean, hey, it is right, Kanye. It is what it is, right? So this is a STL edition question. If you can pick which food is more golden over the other, what would you pick? Chinese food from your favorite Chinese spot, or Imo's?
I'm gonna go Lefties for the fried rice, and I'm gonna go Master Pizza over Imo's every single time. I gotta go with the black-owned spots, baby.
I can respect that. I still haven't tried Lefties, but I did hear it is good. I'm gonna have to try it. Yeah, so my last St. Louis edition question: It shouldn't be too hard for you. It's they're not even in the same category, but they're, we're just gonna see where you're at. So, would you rather have Ted Drews or snack on some Red Hot Ripley?
I don't really like spicy foods. Like them chips are kind of spicy to me.
My heart. Oh my God.
I didn't grow up eating Red Hot Ripley's like that, and I didn't grow up eating Ted Drews like that. So my St. Louis card, my St. Louis card getting taken. But I'm sorry, y'all. I really like. I like Ted Drews whenever I do get it, which is very rare, maybe like once every 2 years. And I will eat Red Hot Ripley's, but that is not that often. So y'all can take my St. Louis card.
At least you've had it, though.
You know what I'm saying?
At least you've had it. If you've never had it, then that's one thing. But I mean, I'm with you with Ted Drews. I've had it. I'll eat it like once a year, just because I don't stay that close to it. But anytime I see some Red Hot Ripley's, I'm grabbing it up. But my favorite snack is definitely Rap Snacks, Little Romeo's. I don't know what it is about them chips. You gotta support the black-owned businesses, man. You gotta support black-owned business before it all. That's why I was like, man, F Ted Drews, I'll grab some
and F all that.
Yeah.
I
grabbed some Rap Snacks before I grabbed some Red Hots. I will say that because them Little Romeo snacks been hidden since I was a kid. So just by default, shout out to Master P. He getting his money out. He's gotten his money out of me for years.
That's who it is. That's who I would. That's the hip hop artist. It's Master P. I got all love and respect for P as a businessman. I highly respect him. Because he knew the game. He knew the
after
game.
Watching his story, it's like, man, he was in the 90s too. So with little resources that he did have, he used whatever he had to his advantage, and it definitely worked out for him. And he put his whole family on. That's one thing I can definitely respect. Like, he helped out everybody.
I don't think people understand that, like, in New Orleans, there are a higher percentage of self-employed people than there are people that are employed. So like that makes sense given that the fact that he was a hustler and went out and was about his business. That's just the culture down there. So much love, much respect. I definitely, now remembering that, I gotta go Mr. Percy Miller. So as the music exec that I will go to. No, I didn't so far. I just was blanking out. I was like, who could this be?
And I was thinking that song, I was like, it's somebody else. And then as we talking, I'm like, dang it, he's well-rounded in both. And he played for the NBA for a hot second. He's like done everything. Yeah. He's acted, he's owned his own film production. Just watching No Limit Soldiers series on BET, I was just very, very stunned. I knew that he did a lot, but it's different when you hear it in chronological order. Like, okay, I was doing this, I was doing this, I was doing that. And I'm like, okay, he wasn't playing no games. So
no games.
Shout out to Master P, because he did that.
Yeah.
So where can the people follow you on if they want to link up with you, if they want to follow your work? What are all your socials?
You can find me everywhere, literally everywhere. Just Googling my name or just my name, Julian Keaton, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, just everywhere. Except Snapchat. I'm not on Snapchat.
MySpace, Bebo, all that old stuff too.
Hey, Bebo was the move, man. People be sleeping on Bebo. But no, yeah, I mean all of the contemporary social media platforms, your Facebook, Twitters, IGs, LinkedIn's, you can find me at Julian Keaton. So. Cool. And then also JulianJules.com if you want to get more music business jewels. And then SeekDimensions.com if you want to be one of the early users of our new social networking geolocation mobile game. You don't want to miss out on that, I promise you.
A man of many titles, man. I appreciate you being my first guest on my podcast and, dropping some jewels and just explaining so much that you didn't even have to. So I appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me and all that good stuff.
I appreciate you. Thank you. It's been an honor.
No problem. And we're out, y'all. Toodles.
Peace.